The first Devil May Cry game was released in 2001 and is an absolute icon in the realm of action games, often being touted as the father of the genre. Regardless of the validity of those claims, it is a certified banger of a game, and it kicked off in what, in my opinion, is the best gaming franchise ever conceived. Often, when regarding my own conception, I like to reminisce about all the changes that this simple PS2 game from 2001 went through when under the scope of the world's most competitive turbo nerds. That's right, speedrunners. While Devil May Cry may garner a few more playthroughs from your average consumer than something like The Last of Us, I don't think that the developers ever could have expected what was to come. Today, I'm going to break down what is the combined knowledge of all the people who have ever spent way too much time playing this amazing game. This is a segmented speedrun of Devil May Cry any% normal in 34:42 in-game time, performed by Waifu, the current world record holder. Before we get into the speedrun proper, let's define this run. This is any%, which means completing the game with any percentage of completion, whatever is the fastest. This run is done on the normal difficulty. Normal is the default difficulty that the game starts with when you launch it for the first time. Easy has to be unlocked by either dying 3 times inside the first 3 missions or using a vital star. Unfortunately, easy isn't very good for speedruns even once it's unlocked. It has an automatic combat function that cannot be turned off. This function essentially removes the player's ability to control what moves they're doing, opting for the game to decide for you. This allows low-skilled players to mash the attack button and not be punished as hard. However, for high-level play, this often gets in the way of what you're actually trying to do. It also completely messes with the lock-on function at the start of every room because of this. Despite the easier enemy arrangements, additional devil trigger, and reduced boss health, it's not the favorite for speedrunners because of the automatic function, and it wasn't even faster than normal until late 2024. The other 2 difficulties, Hard and Dante Must Die, are both considerably harder, with harder enemies earlier, additional boss health, harder hitting enemies, and more expensive items in the shop. So runners most of the time opt for normal difficulty. From the main menu, we select New Game, then the Dante costume, and the normal difficulty. The run starts in 3, 2, 1, Devil May Cry. With the run finally started, we get a few cutscenes that we skip immediately. A TLDR of the story is that we are Dante, a half-demon, half-human, whose father betrayed the demons and locked them all away before dodging child support payments for the rest of time. Our mother was killed by some demons, and we take out our daddy issues on whatever demons cross our path because of it, opening a shop called Devil May Cry. Everything was fine and dandy until one day someone who looks exactly like our mom shows up to the shop, stabs us with our own sword, throws a motorcycle at us, and then insists that she isn't here to hurt us.
But I'm not your enemy.
She says that Mundus, a big demon baddie, is opening the gate to hell on Malay Island and that we need to stop him. So we follow her there somehow. I mean, really, how do we get on this island? There's like no boat or anything. And then she just leaves us to fuck around and find out. Insert the devil potentially crying. The game is structured by 23 missions, but before the first one starts, we get this little introduction walk. It's faster to jump than run, especially uphill, so we jump up these stairs and into this cave. This starts the first mission. The very first room of the first mission in the game is a bit of a collectathon. Well, it's technically a movement tutorial disguised as a collectathon. There's a door that requires 45 red orbs to open. Red orbs are the game's currency, and they're scattered around this room. The intended pathing would have the player jump from platform to platform, collecting all of the orbs. Thankfully, there's a secret hidden orb cache on the tip of the spear on this horse statue. By jumping on top of the horse's spear, you can instantly collect 100 orbs, more than enough to open the door and progress the level. The horse jump is actually super difficult though, as the fixed cameras aren't exactly sufficient for precision platforming. Through the next room and up the spiral staircase, we arrive at the first enemy, marionettes. Marionettes are this game's bread and butter enemy, showing up the most times out of any enemy in the game. They're your basic humanoid enemy, but they come with a multitude of variations, much to the speedrunner's chagrin. They have a random amount of health, anywhere between 800 and 1500. The health amount being roughly represented by the color of the marionette, blue being the weakest, green being then a bit stronger, and reds finally being the strongest. They also have a variety of weapons, from daggers to watermelon blades, and if you're really unlucky, even the gat. This first encounter is a simple one, as the room isn't locked. After collecting the rusty key that we need to open the door that was in the main hall, we jump back down and slam a helm breaker down on the marionette below, canceling the recovery faster than normal by rolling into the doorway of the stairwell. Jumping is faster when going uphill or on a flat surface, but when going across extended gaps of flat ground, it's faster to roll than it is to jump. The roll can only be done sideways though, so creating a perfect perpendicular angle to where you need to go is required for optimal speed. This makes the technique pretty niche, especially as it's outperformed by better techniques very quickly later in the run. After jumping on top of this totally innocuous airplane that I have no idea how they got in this tiny room, and collecting another secret orb cache, we head down into the basement, hitting this dial with a specific combo that is the fastest way to fill up the meter required to activate the elevator. Now we're in the basement, and the basement drives me crazy. Crazy? I was crazy once. They locked me in a basement full of red marionettes, and red marionettes drive me crazy. As you might have guessed from that last bit, this is one of the most, if not the most, reset-heavy sections in the entire speedrun. There are two waves of enemies that need to be killed down here. The first have scripted colors, but not scripted health, meaning that they will always have the same range of HP, but their total HP will vary from run to run. This changes exactly how the enemies will die and in what order, which also changes how the combat is approached slightly. The second is completely random, with all 6 enemy spawns able to be any color and have any range of health and any weapons. Speaking of combat, let's take a second to break it down a little bit. In Devil May Cry, Dante's moveset is fairly limited. The game came out in 2001, but what it lacked in a giant move list, it made up for in utility and creative expression. For now, we'll only talk about the sword combat. The triangle button is used to do every move with the sword. What controls what attack you do is the frequency of when you press the buttons. Simply mashing the attack creates a 3-hit combo, with the final hit sending the enemy flying. But if you pause between the second and third hit, and then continue to press the button, you'll create an entirely new combo. The most important part of this system is how each hit in every combo variation is its own hit that requires its own button press. This allows the player to simply stop a combo at any point and interject with a new attack. Holding the lock-on button, R1, and using character-dependent directional inputs creates new special attacks that generally have more utility than a normal attack. For example, holding towards Dante's back will cause him to launch the enemy in the air. This can be interjected at any point of any combo to almost immediately cancel the current animation and start this new attack. There are a few different directional moves and several different pause combo variations, and the player is able to mix and match these, interrupting their previous move with a new one whenever they want to. This is just the game's basic combat system, however. Of course, there are many things that speedrunners have figured out to squeeze even more depth out of this now 24-year-old game's systems. The first of which is used right here in the basement, and it's called slash canceling. When recovering from an attack, there is a long animation that has to play out before another action can be taken. This can be interrupted by inputting the command for another attack or a jump, things of that sort. In this instance though, we don't want to launch the enemy in the air or send them flying. Ideally, we'd like to repeat the same first 2 hits of the combo without there being a huge delay. We could skip a lot of this recovery animation by spinning the left stick in a circle. This tricks the game into thinking that we want to move and fast, overwriting the animation and freeing Dante from it prematurely. This allows us to be able to loop the first 2 hits over and over again without dropping the combo or losing the stun on the enemies. This tech can be used to cancel any recovery animation from attacks in the game, and will be used frequently throughout the run. Back to the actual run, we use slash canceling to mow our way through the first wave of enemies, attacking from a direction that we hope will eventually catch all of them. Oftentimes this green likes to survive, so launching him into the air and blasting him away with the blicky is the best solution. For the second wave, the enemies come in groups of 2 out of these 3 portholes. By walking up to one and hugging its side, you can gather up the 2 marionettes so that they'll be close enough to get caught up into one combo. After they're done and dusted, it's fastest to use Ebony and Ivory to kill the other marionettes. As much as people love to clown on DMC2, DMC1 actually has way higher gun damage than any other Devil May Cry, especially if you add quick shooting on top of that. Quick shooting is a simple mechanic. If you mash the button in a certain rhythm, you can max out Dante's shooting speed. This shooting speed is much faster than normal. There are actually 2 different max shooting speeds, one for on the ground and one for in the air, with the air shooting speed being slightly faster. The air shooting speed is so fast it actually slows down your fall back to reality. It feels like you're playing DMC5 for a second. Going back upstairs, there is now a large amount of additional enemies. These all have scripted colors but random health ranges. The first 3 are taken out with a few slash cancels, and then we get to the purple. We launch into the air to avoid attacks from off screen. The final red marionette has the ability to block your attacks like Camilla can block you on Twitter, so slash canceling like normal won't suffice. We instead do 1-2 high time to launch the enemy into the air, where we can then juggle him with repeated 1-2 high times and finish him off by shooting his dead body towards the end of the mission. This helps to collect his orbs quickly, which is necessary as this first mission needs to be an S rank for the orb economy. Since I took so damn long explaining the basic combat abilities in this level, I won't dive 100% into the orb economy just yet. But know that of all the DMC games, DMC1's orb economy is the most vital to its speedrun, controlling what abilities you get when and how many items you can purchase for each level. Your purchasing power, while affected by enemy orb drops, is mostly dictated by your end mission ranking. You receive a bonus for higher ranks, and also when you defeat bosses. With mission 1 S rank out of the way, we head into mission 2. The start of every mission has a power-up menu. This is the shop. It allows you to buy items and abilities. This mission has items unlocked, but not abilities, and because of that, it's not useful. Loading into the first room of this level, we'll notice the very first random enemy spawns in the game. In normal difficulty, this doesn't matter very much, but in higher difficulties, it's a much bigger deal. This hallway can have marionettes, or not. At the end of the hall, we grab Alistair from its wall. It firmly lodges itself in our chest, and then we take it out and swing it around just in case anyone was watching and was thinking that we were a little bitch. That'll show them. Into the next room, we grab a key from a haunted painting and head back towards the courtyard. This return hallway also has random spawns, but we actually want them this time around. Now that we have Alistair, we're not only unlocking the ability to buy upgrades from the shop, but also the ability to use Devil Trigger. These 3 runes underneath the health bar are our Devil Trigger, the most valuable resource in this game. Devil Trigger is gained by attacking enemies or taking damage. When you deal damage to an enemy, the game takes the total damage done and then divides it by a factor that's unique for each enemy type. For example, with marionettes, you can do a regular slash for 320 damage. Divide this by 20, add 1. Each rune has a total of 120 units, so doing 320 damage to a marionette would be 17 DT units. After hitting just over 7 times, you would build enough to fill 1 whole rune. Doing so grants access to a series of completely unique moves, heals the player over time, increases movement speed, increases damage resistance, and most importantly, doubles damage done. The single most important thing in Devil May Cry 1 speedrunning is DT management. Making sure you have it when you need it and maximizing its efficiency when you use it. Back to the hallway, we're hoping to get one of those marionette spawns so we can use them to build DT. In this run, I got them in the courtyard. Another way to build DT instead of doing damage is to taunt. With Dante trolling the marionette, it builds his ego, and it literally gives him more power. A lot more, in fact. The amount of DT built from a taunt depends on your range from the enemy. Point blank builds the most DT. This can literally be spammed to build DT super quickly as there is no cooldown. Taunting like this builds 240 DT units, or 2 full runes. This hallway with a piano in it always has these marionette spawns, but we don't actually need to fight them. Jumping past them allows us to hit this piano out of the way so we can collect an item that lets us finish the level. Before we can do so, though, we have to backtrack through the haunted painting room, and unfortunately, it has come to life. This introduces Sin Scissors, the absolute bane of Mission 2. These enemies can fly through walls, of course, and it can also block your attacks. They have a mask on their face, which is a weak point. They essentially don't take damage anywhere else. This is what we needed the DT for. As they slowly approach us at the exit of the room, we can taunt to get full Devil Trigger. With this, we can jump off of their heads and do a Helmbreaker, which does enough damage to instantly kill them. Helmbreaker by itself already does a lot of damage, but by double jumping, we add an additional 2 times damage modifier to the attack. Then, by activating Devil Trigger, we add an additional 2 times damage multiplier that stacks. With this combined damage and the reduced stun from DT, this makes it impossible for the scissors to block the attack, making this fight way more consistent. If you get lucky, you can get a double kill or even a triple kill on the scissors with 1 Helmbreaker. After the enemies are dead, we take a quick detour to break a table because we are just that stoked that we got out of Mission 2. Inside this table was the shotgun though, which is going to come in clutch for the next mission. We go into our inventory and equip it, making sure we are mid-fall while the door opening cutscene plays to get some additional movement when we otherwise wouldn't have been able to. Running to the door, we continue into the 3rd mission, collecting our 2nd S rank. The first 2 S ranks are essential, so that when we finally have the opportunity to buy abilities for Alistair, we can afford both Stinger 1 and 2. This is because while not only is the forward thrust move super useful in combat, it's also the fastest form of movement you could do outside of Devil Trigger. Getting an S rank on the first 2 missions is pretty straightforward, but the ranking system itself has far more depth than it may seem at a first glance. Mission 3 embodies this. If you don't understand the ranking system, it's going to be really hard to follow exactly how the money route works to the rest of the run, especially when it comes to Mission 3. The timing couldn't have been any better because basically all that happens in the first half of this mission is stinger movement. And while that's absolutely riveting, I'm sure, it's a little basic. Alright, so ranks. In Devil May Cry, you can get a rank of D, C, B, A, or S. This is going in ascending order, with S rank being the best rank you can get, and a D rank being the worst rank you can get. At the end of every mission, you're given one of these ranks, and it's supposed to holistically represent how well you did in that mission. Depending on which rank you get a certain amount of orbs as a bonus for that rank, with an S rank giving you the biggest bonus and a D rank giving you the lowest bonus. How it's calculated, though, is actually a little bit complicated. The ranking system uses 3 main metrics to determine what your rank's going to be for that mission: time spent, damage taken, and orbs collected. All 3 of these have a potential of 500 score that could be assigned to you if you do it perfectly. In order to get an S rank on normal difficulty, you need 1,000 score total, meaning that you can miss one of these categories entirely as long as you do the other 2 perfectly. On Dante Must Die mode, however, you only need 700 points to S rank, meaning it's actually a bit easier to get an S rank on Dante Must Die than it is on normal. I think this is because the game is rewarding you for playing on Big Boy mode, but it could be that you take more damage on that difficulty, so it needs to adjust for the damage scaling a bit. The way the time category works is that every level in Devil May Cry 1 has a unique par time. This is just an estimation of how long the level should take you if you know what you're doing. If you complete the level in less time than the par time, you receive all 500 points. If you are slower than the par time, but by less than 30 seconds, you'll receive 300 points instead. If you're slower than the par time by more than 30 seconds, but by less than 2 minutes, you'll receive 200 points. And if you are more than 2 minutes slower than the par time, but less than 5 minutes slower than the par time, you'll receive 100 points. If you're more than 5 minutes slower than the par time, you'll receive 0 points. For damage taken, if you take no damage whatsoever, then you'll receive 500 points. But if you take even the tiniest bit of damage outside of damage over time, which on normal does not affect your rank, but on Dante Must Die does, then you take... As for damage taken, if you don't take any damage in the mission at all, you'll receive all 500 points. The only exception to this is the damage over time on missions like Mission 3 and Mission 7, where on the normal difficulty, it does not affect your score at all. On Dante Must Die difficulty, it does, however, unless you have Devil Trigger activated during the damage over time. As for the other damage calculations, if you take any damage at all, you'll only receive 300 points. If you take more than 500 damage, which is exactly 1/2 of the default health bar, then you'll receive 200 points. If you take more than 1 whole health bar, then you'll only receive 100 points. If you take more than 1.5 health bars or 1,500 damage, then you'll receive 0 points for damage taken. Lastly, we have orbs collected, which works very similarly to how time works. Every level has a unique par orb collected, and if you collect 100% of those orbs for the par orbs, you will get 500 score. If you only collect 80% of those orbs, then you'll receive 300 score. And if you only collect 50% of those orbs, you will only get 200 score. 30% orbs will only give you 100 score, and if you have less than 30% of orbs collected, you won't receive any score at all. This obviously means that you have the potential to score up to 1,500 points, but there really isn't much reason to do so, as the highest ranking gives you an S rank at 1,000 points. This means you can mix and match these different score values as long as you end up with over 1,000 points at the end of the mission. If I was saying that this is the only way that score is calculated, I'd be a bit dishonest. There are 2 more factors that you need to consider. Completing secret missions can actually give you additional score on top of these scores. So for example, the secret mission on Mission 3, if you complete it, gives you 200 score. So you're able to get a score higher than 1,500 if you do them. Items also negatively impact your score. So if you use a holy water, for example, that's minus 100 score. If you've been paying attention, then you would know that you're easily able to get over 1,000 points even while using items in some instances, as long as you're playing well. and there really isn't much incentive to get a score higher than that because you're not rewarded for doing so. Well, except that you actually are. If you get a score of 1,500 points, then you receive a special bonus. This is exactly what it describes, a special 2,000 orb bonus given to you at the end of the mission for completing it with a theoretical perfect score. Back to the actual run, the goal for this mission, as you may have guessed, is to get a special bonus. It's a speedrun, so we'll always get 500 score for time, but that means we need to collect enough orbs and to no damage the mission in order to guarantee this special bonus. By jumping up above the door and collecting this orb cache, we have guaranteed the orb requirement as long as we grab the boss orbs. Triggering the bridge to break on the way back by jumping saves about a second and a half, as the animation for getting struck by lightning in the air is a lot faster than it is on the ground. Makes sense, you don't want the lightning to have to travel an extra few feet. Light moves notoriously slowly. Once underwater, the damage over time starts, but this won't affect our ranking because we're on normal. Aggroing 2 skulls at the same time and then blowing them away like it's Halo 2 does this room as fast as it can be done. This also builds DP back to full for the boss fight. Collecting the Pride of the Lion spawns in our very first boss fight, Phantom, a huge gatekeeper for casual players. He of course has his boy hole blown out faster than a femboy on a Friday in the speedrun. Let's run that back and explain exactly what's going on here. As we mentioned before, Double Trigger adds a 2x damage modifier, and double jumping also adds a 2x multiplier on top of that. In addition, the boss's abdomen is a weak spot that does extra hit stun and does an additional 2x damage. That's 8x damage on the Helmbreaker on top of the stun. When Phantom stuns, he always charges forward for a set amount of time and then recovers. Because of this, he'll simply walk into the wall, giving the speedrunner more than enough time to loop a few Helmbreakers until the boss is dead. While this looks super easy, it's actually one of the biggest hurdles in getting a good time in DMZ1, as the platforming required is quite difficult, and the boss spawns with multiple random patterns that have to be adapted to. On the last hit, deactivating Double Trigger will cause the boss's death to refill the Double Trigger immediately, allowing us to use DT to run through the orbs and towards the exit door. You can't Stinger immediately because the lock-on is so confused that the boss died that fast that it's still trying to lock onto its dead body. Arriving at the door, we beat the level and achieve our very first special bonus, setting up the orb route for the rest of the run. Starting mission 4, we're absolutely rolling in orbs. We use these to buy 4 holy waters and a purple orb. Purple orbs refill your Devil Trigger when purchased, as well as add an additional Devil Trigger rune, allowing you to store and use more overall Devil Trigger. These are the most important items in the route, as they save time in every room in the game post their purchase. What holy waters are used for will become apparent very shortly. Steering our way through the halls of mission 4, Phantom is pissed that we embarrassed him in front of so many people, so he's chasing our ass down. This can simply be avoided by opening a door to the left and entering the next room. We use the Pride of the Lion to deactivate this force field protecting a lion statue. Upon 3 hits, it'll break, spawning in a shadow, who we need to defeat to progress. The last hit that's used to actually break it will have its animation play to completion post cutscene skip, so we do an attack like Stinger with a fast recovery, so we can more easily dodge the instant attack the shadow always does. Shadows are an interesting enemy because they can't normally be damaged by swords. They have a shield that repels and damages the player if you hit them with a sword. The intended strategy is to shoot it with guns until it reveals its core, that you can then hit with your sword unpunished. Once it's taken enough damage, it'll turn red and chase the player down. If it manages to grab you, it'll kamikaze itself trying to take you with it. If it loses you though, it'll instantly explode, giving up on life. The shield not only has random health, but also many of the attacks Shadow can do give it invincibility frames, so even if the attack does hit, it doesn't do damage to the shield. This is a problem because we have a shotgun equipped, and the shotgun sucks for breaking the shield and can be easily iframed. Thankfully, almost every enemy in the game has a built-in counter or a weakness, and for Shadow, it's their skewer attack. By moving in this exact method, we can get the Shadow to land behind this wall where he can't see us. Then by moving the correct distance away from him and standing still, when he finally can see us, we're in the perfect range to bait him into doing the skewer attack. This manipulation allows us to consistently jump on top of the skewer and shoot the Shadow for a critical kill. Critical kills cause Shadows to not even show their core, but instantly turn red and chase you down. By wiggling back and forth while shooting the shotgun, we can increase its fire rate just enough to squeeze in 3 shots, triggering this critical kill. On top of this, the critical kill makes the shadow drop significantly more orbs. This is great because it allows us to get eaten by the shadow, eliminating any of the randomness of him chasing us down before giving up and exploding. We can do this and not sacrifice our ranking bonus for this mission because of the absurd amount of orbs that this critical kill gives us. Using Devil Trigger allows us to get inside even faster, and because we go through the door, it automatically is deactivated. Deactivating the Devil Trigger manually loses exactly 1 rune, but by going through the door and having it deactivate it for us instead, we avoid this penalty. Once inside the stairwell, we need to get to the top of the room. The best way to do this is to launch this marionette into the air and jump off of him, and then jump off of the wall to get on top of the stairs. In DMC1, you can always do a wall jump and a jump off an enemy, so this essentially allows you to triple jump, skipping most of the stairs. 1 more wall jump and we grab the death sentence that we then use to remove this statue's ball gag. This is when our second boss shows up. He shows us some guts and honor and taunts us to come outside. Something seems different with this guy. He smells awful, so we're gonna give him a bit of a bath. The Nello Angelo boss fight has 2 phases. Once he reaches 2/3 of his total HP, he'll teleport up to the next platform with a small cutscene. Then, once again at 1/3 HP, he will teleport to the top of the room. This is really slow, so instead of letting him do anything, we're going to slash cancel him a few times to get him just above 2/3 HP. And then, we're gonna give him some of that Catholic priest bathwater. Holy waters do massive damage to both normal enemies and bosses in one big burst. In this instance, it's just enough damage to instantly kill Nello before either phase is triggered, instantly ending the level. We actually lose this fight, but upon being choked like Daddy wanted, Dante's amulet falls out of his shirt. When Nello sees this, he freaks out and forgot that he left his oven on at home, so he flies away to turn it off. We only get an A rank, but that was the desired result here. Mission 5 is the second shortest mission in the whole game, but it's going to help us a ton for our orb routing. We're going to do another special bonus. The mission is essentially just a single shadow fight, and we're going to do the same strategy we did in Mission 4, standing at the perfect range to manipulate him into doing skewer. Once he's critical killed, we jump up to the top level and collect an orb cache that has exactly 100 orbs. This is the exact amount of the par orbs for this level. Leaving the room and heading into the bottom of this pit, we finished Mission 5 in only 47 seconds, and with a special bonus. Mission 6, we make a new purchase of 2 abilities, Vortex level 1 and 2. While Stinger is the fastest form of movement when you don't have Devil Trigger, Vortex is the fastest overall. This move actually requires the player to be in Devil Trigger and in the air to perform. Dante spins like he's a goddamn Beyblade towards an enemy at rapid speeds. This drains DT twice as fast as normal, but moves significantly faster than even Stinger level 2. From here on out, the reason that we route the DT the way we do is to maximize the amount of time spent in Vortex. Spinning our way to the next room, we collect another rusty key. Makes me wish we didn't throw away the first one. And this spawns in a horde of Beelzebugs. These enemies are annoying as hell, so we just give them a bath too. The damage taken from the holy water gives us enough DT to activate again, and we vortex through the next hall. One thing that you might have noticed is that I vortex past some enemies here. Vortex normally auto-locks on to enemies, so you can hit them easily with the attack. This can be overridden by holding the right trigger down. Only 2 moves in the game can override lock-on, and Vortex is one of them. This is a huge reason for its increased speed compared to Stinger, as Stinger doesn't have the ability, making it impossible to Stinger away from enemies. This feature actually returns in DMC2, where you can hold right trigger to override lock-on for every attack in the game. Once at the mini-boss for this level, we dump a holy water on him as well, getting us an A rank for the mission. The mini-boss's death refills our Devil Trigger, and we immediately use it to fly to the other end of the hallway. It's deactivated by Phantom, who once again is chasing us down this hall. Jumping over his fireballs, we escape and stinger our way down the next one. Counting the exact number of stingers, we stop and hold lock on and shoot to charge up the shotgun. This stores the energy in the gun, making its next few shots essentially Devil Trigger shots. With some good luck, the 3 synthesizers will line up and...
Oh, baby, a triple! Oh, yeah!
This refills our DT to full and we make it to the door before the cutscene even plays, opening it. The next room has a dial from mission 1 that needs to be activated to get us up to the top floor. This mission needs to have an S rank to make up for some of the holy waters that we've been using in the previous missions. But in order to get that, we need to complete the mission without taking any damage. This is where Vortex comes in clutch, as it quickly activates the dial as well as kills any bugs in the way that could potentially hit us. On the ride up, we use the shotgun to regain as much DT as possible. Once the level is over, we arrive at an interesting impasse. While we do get our S rank, the next mission doesn't start and we're kicked back into the gameplay. This is the first of 2 intermissions. The speedrun is normally timed real-time minus load screens. This is because the in-game timer is not very good for full game speedruns. It misses lots of the game's sections that should probably be timed. For example, this intermission section isn't in the in-game timer at all. So in theory, if a run was only timed by in-game time, you could, in this section, go back to the mission 4 hallway and farm phantom kills to gain a ton of orbs and max out your devil trigger runes and abilities, as well as buying as many items as you wanted before proceeding in the run, extending the actual time spent on the speedrun by about an hour or so, without actually increasing the in-game timer at all. On top of this, the mission end and start screens, as well as the menus for purchasing items and abilities, are also not timed. Because of this, we use real-time minus load screens. This run you're watching is a segmented run used to optimize the in-game timer while still not abusing it, using only strategies that I have done in my full game world record. That's all a long way of saying that this 5-second section here that's not timed on the in-game timer, I still tried to do fast for the sake of this video. Starting mission 8, we have another quite short level. This time we're aiming for an S rank and it should be pretty simple, just don't take damage. Squeezing out a little bit of extra movement from Vortex to the boss cutscene for Phantom turns off our devil trigger. We still don't have enough to reactivate though, so we need a quick taunt. We run to this spot on the wall, and while Phantom does his scripted jump at us, we taunt. We don't have enough time to do a normal taunt though, so we have to do a short one. There are actually 2 different taunts in this game, a short one and a long one. By pressing the right trigger lightly, it does a one-handed taunt that is 1 second faster, but only gives 1 DT rune. While pressing it down hard gives 2-handed taunt, which gives 2 DT runes, but is 1 second longer. They also can be done more consistently by pressing the right stick up for one-handed and down for 2-handed. This gives us enough DT to be able to activate. Then we can wall jump to get a 4 times damage modifier. We hit him in the face twice, this stuns him, causing him to run forward so we can jump over to his boy hole and finish the fight. After collecting his orbs, we DT run to collect the trident and go into the hole. From here, we activate a lever and collect the most broken gun in all of Devil May Cry, the grenade gun. It instantly showcases why it's useful, as it insta-kills a red marionette and also refills our DT so we can DT run down the stairs. Ending the mission, we get our S rank and head into the next. Here we buy 3 holy waters and another purple orb, upping our total rune count to 5. Staggering to the stairwell, we then DT run down to the door. This leaves us with enough DT to be able to vortex past the blades that are introduced to us in the next room, and right to where we need to go to collect our new weapon, Ifrit. We activate the platforming puzzle, but then instead of doing it like normal, we wall jump off the last platform and land on top of it, skipping the entire sequence. Ifrit is a gauntlet and greaves weapon that, instead of pause combos, allows you to charge all of your attacks by holding the button down longer. We won't see this being used like this for quite some time though. Its dive kick is useful though, for getting out of this room quickly. Once out, we arrive at the first Griffin boss fight. This massive featherhead is a huge pain, so we're just gonna skip him. Shooting him with a grenade launcher gives massive amounts of devil trigger, and then we head over to this door that we need Ifrit to open. By dive kicking the right side of the door, we open it, allowing us to simply leave the boss arena. Goodbye, Griffin. Dive kick with Ifrit is the other move that can have its lock-on overwritten by holding down the right trigger. We then switch back to Alistair without going into the menu by clicking in the right stick and getting this little animation. Once in the forest, we have another marionette fight. This time, there's a bit of a twist. This combat encounter introduces Fetishes. These are essentially just more powered up versions of marionettes. This is proven by the fact that they can exist in the same room. I don't know if you've noticed, but in DMC 1, the memory limit is so low that multiple normal enemy types can't exist in the same room. Like, you'll never see a Shadow and a Fetish, or an Assault and a Sin Scissor in the same room. This is because on PS2, there simply isn't enough memory to have such different enemy AI functioning at the same time. For the sake of the speedrun, the Fetishes are just tankier marionettes, taking 2 DT grenade launcher shots to die instead of just 1. This fight is pseudo-random. Once the door is activated, 4 sets of enemies will spawn, 3 marionettes in the center of the room, and a Fetish in the back. Once those are killed, there are 3 spawning locations that the rest of the enemies can spawn from. It's random which spot they spawn from, but the order of the enemies is consistent. So the 3rd, 6th, and 9th spawn will always be a Fetish. We're praying that the first spawn is at this location here, because there is a holy water above us that we want to grab quickly while we wait for the enemies to spawn, eliminating a little bit of the downtime from picking it up. The fastest way to eliminate these enemies by far is using the grenade gun. Every variation of marionettes besides Fetishes will die in 1 grenade launcher shot with Devil Trigger active. Half of all enemy rolls die in 1 non-DT grenade launcher gun shot as well. DT gain is calculated from damage done, so if you have DT active and then shoot the grenade gun, and then deactivate it before the grenade gun actually hits, you'll receive 2 times the normal amount of DT from a grenade gun shot. This is called DT flashing, and makes the grenade gun even more busted than it was before. On top of this, the grenade gun normally has a really long recovery animation, but this can be interrupted by jumping or rolling. With these 2 strategies combined, we can essentially always have DT active, as long as we're smart about when we activate and deactivate it. Once the fight is over, we head to the end of the level, making sure that we have DT for the start of the next. Completing this mission without taking damage is a requirement for getting an S rank, and this S rank is more important than some of the prior ones. The mission ranking bonus scales based on how far into the game you are. So in missions 1 through 8, the S rank gives you only 800 orbs, but for missions 9 through 16, it gives you 1500, making it even more important to get good ranks the further you are into the game. Now that we have the grenade gun and a substantial amount of Devil Trigger, we're going to be really min-maxing the amount of time we're using it. You won't see a single room in the rest of the game where it isn't active or at least being built up. For the sake of time, I won't call out every single interaction, but I'll be sure to mention new instances of way we use or build DT. Mission 10 is heavily inspired by the Lost Woods from Zelda. You collect a white glowing orb that is annoying as fuck, or it shows you where to go. There are 3 rooms that have 2 possible paths each. If you go down the wrong path, then you get sent back to the beginning of the mission and are forced to start it over from scratch. The correct path is not scripted though, it depends on where the floating fucker goes. This can be manipulated thankfully, but it takes a bit of know-how. By vortexing into the Fetish on the right before activating the light, it'll head over to him instead of to the left like it does by default. This is great as we can push the Fetish into the next enemy and kill them both at once to refill our Devil Trigger. The light isn't quite ready to leave yet though, so we need to kill 1 more marionette with a DT flash to enter to the next room. The next room greets us with 3 Sin Sides, who we quickly take out with a grenade gun, a Helmbreaker, and a well-placed Vortex that sends us right where we need to go. The blades in the next room have random health values and don't have a consistent counter, so we use a holy water on them to escape the room quickly. Doing it like this guarantees the orb for the left path on both this room and the previous one. Finally, we arrive at the Clyclops room, mini rock spiders that, well, never mind. You only get to see them this one time in the run, and we just dump a holy water on them, so they don't even get to play the game. There's also a holy water in this room that we pick up off the ground, and if we have good movement, we can get to the door right as it opens with full DT ending the mission. Because we use 2 holy waters, we get an A rank. Heading into mission 11, we immediately plop into this hole to avoid a death sight, using Vortex to open a hole in the wall and then jump past the blades. Once back in, we use the blades to build DT back up and Vortex past the death scythe and into the boss fight. Here we fight Nella Angelo too, and as the name suggests, we use 2 holy waters instead of 1. Afterwards, we have the single hardest jump in the game. This jump is fucking impossible, and I'm not even going to attempt to describe why. Just look at it. Once up top, there's a scripted jump that sends you across towards the key item. It's faster by about half a second to do this jump with a jump instead of a stinger jump. This nets us an S rank going into mission 12, where we see something truly terrifying. Underwater level controls. Speeding past the enemies at the start, we take a swim inside this crashed pirate ship. The underwater controls, while we all wish they didn't need to exist, are actually surprisingly robust. The analog vertical camera is inverted, of course, but the D-pad is not inverted. On top of that, the X button pushes the player forward, and the triangle button turns quickly in whatever direction you're turning. However, if you hold the lock-on button, then you lock your look angle, and you can side strafe from side to side, or even do a complete 180 with Y. This is immediately used to grab an untouchable out of a chest and then jump out of the water. Underwater, you can't actually do any combat at all, at least not yet. That's why we need to grab the needle rifle before heading up to the top of the ship. Activating the door to the captain's lounge triggers a mini-boss, the Sin Scythe, to spawn, and he's pissed that we just ran past him in the prior mission. Death Scythes can't die in one hit, even if the attack being done to them should do way more damage than their total health. They stay alive at 500 HP and then need to be hit again. Because of this, normally one holy water wouldn't be able to kill, but if we stand in a certain position, multiple waves of damage can be felt from the holy water because the enemy's moving as it spawns. Once he's despawned, we interact with the door again to spawn in Griffin, and he's also pissed that we didn't fight him the first time. He must not have been paying attention though when we smoked Mr. Death Scythe, because if he did, he would know what's in store for him. By standing in this spot, we can look at Dante's aiming animation to see when he's able to shoot Griffin. Once he aims up, we DT, shoot the grenade gun twice, and then wait just a moment before stingering into the side of the bird. This does just enough damage so that when we use a holy water, the fight will finish instantly. Mission 13 is the shortest mission in the game, and you guessed it, it's a water level. Well, you can get a quick, easy S rank on this mission by not taking any damage. Swimming through the ship, we can manipulate the blades to have them end up in the same spot every time. From here, we can blast them with the needle gun and kill them without even getting them to fight back. While the door breaking animation is playing, we can use the D-pad to turn the camera towards the entrance. This is now our second intermission. The next room isn't timed on IGT, and it has a holy water that you could potentially pick up. In real time, this is a little bit slow though, so we just vortex through the room, making sure to build our DT before leaving proper. The start of mission 14 has the biggest purchase in the game: 3 holy waters and 2 abilities, Air Hike and Air Raid. Air Raid allows us to double jump without needing a wall, and Air Raid allows us to stay in the air floating and shoot lightning down on those below us. The latter is mostly used so that when you're doing more complicated vortex climbs where you have to change directions multiple times, you don't lose height or have the potential to drop the move entirely. This helps greatly for this mission, as Vortex makes us invincible to the spikes coming out of the floor as long as we're actively doing the move, making no damage much more possible. Once out of the elevator, we do a stinger jump towards the next exit, and make sure to stinger into the right side of the door transition when going through it. This is because door transitions actually take into account the angle you went through the door from the previous room and put you in the next room at the same angle. This helps us to be able to consistently stinger jump at the start of the next room. This room has random enemies, and otherwise it might be random whether you lock onto an enemy or actually able to stinger along the edge. Another S rank out of the way, and we head into one of the longest missions of the run, mission 15. We will not be getting an S rank here. There are 2 pathways that we can go towards, one on the left and one on the right. The right path requires us to hit a few dials that are rather slow, so we opt for the left. Using an untouchable gives you unlimited double trigger for about 20 seconds. During this time, you are literally invincible and can take no damage. This is great for Vortex flying through the spikes that would normally stun you, skipping any waiting in the ring. If you leave a room with an untouchable still active, you actually get full double trigger refill. Now that we have the spears, we can head to the boss arena where we Vortex into its activation trigger. As soon as we land, we holy water. Griffin 3 has two main phases, and the first phase is really annoying. The final bit of damage can't be done in one burst, so we have to accurately time our grenade launcher shots to hit the bird twice while in DT. He's flying up and down. The grenade gun projectile is quite slow, so we have to shoot him only at the peak of his flying, while he's off screen, of course. Once he falls to the ground, he is quickly finished off by 2 more holy waters. This nets us a C rank for this mission. Mission 16 is also quite a long one, and with the most complicated boss fight in the game, no less. We have to backtrack now that it's nighttime, and back into the castle we go. It's faster to Vortex to this door, but you need the DT for the next room. Shooting the grenade gun if you Vortex often will cause the shot to miss, losing a lot of time, so it's more consistent if you just DT run. Back inside, we introduce a new enemy, the Plasmas, who are essentially just copies of Dante, but can transform into bats that are made out of lightning. It would be better to use Ifrit on them if it weren't for how completely busted the grenade gun is and how slow it is to switch weapons. Here comes the new boss, Nightmare. I could write a whole video on just the details of how this boss works, and I most likely will at some point, because that shit is complicated, yo. Before the fight even starts, we activate one of 4 dials in the room. This causes the boss to spawn in its solid state. Normally, the boss starts in a liquid state, and you have to hit the dials for it to be solid for a short period of time. When in liquid form, the boss constantly shoots small attacks at you and tries to suck you into itself, where you can then fight another boss and some skulls for some big damage. The solid state, on the other hand, has a series of more concentrated attacks, followed by brief periods where it exposes one of its 2 cores. These cores are where the boss takes damage, and we have to be careful about how we do said damage. There are 3 Nightmare fights across the game, and both of its cores have 3 phases: blue, green, and red. The blue and green phase take much more damage than the red phase. Each progressive phase also has the boss's attacks while it's out last longer and hurt more. The most important thing is that these core phases actually carry over from boss fight to boss fight. So if you break a core to green in the first fight, it'll start green in the second. So finding ways to completely kill the boss quickly without making your cores red for the final fight is quite complicated. The cores break roughly based on the amount of hits taken, not the damage dealt, with some exceptions. A bonus for us is that the first Nightmare fight has a special rule that states that the core change can only happen once. So if we break a core from blue to green, it can't break from green to red in this fight. Knowing this, we can quickly one-cycle the boss by baiting out an attack from the front and jumping on top and then repeating this combo. DT Grenade Gun, High Time, Helmbreaker. The high time that precedes the Helmbreaker actually causes the Helmbreaker to do 2 times damage. This quickly breaks the core to green. Fast enough, in fact, for the longer attack of the boss to take effect on the very first attack, giving us just enough time to finish off the boss before he hides his cores again. This creates a clean 1 cycle where the boss really doesn't even get to play the game. We then wait for the boss orbs and until the boss death refills our devil trigger before proceeding to the bridge where we vortex to the end of the level. These huge orbs at the end of the bridge that are 100 each are actually the same ones that were small on mission 3. If you collect them on mission 3, they'll never grow big. This is super important for late game orb routing, as both this mission and mission 19 need these orbs to be able to get the S rank. We purposely avoid them earlier on, and here in some instances, to be able to get those S ranks later. On mission 17, we once again are doing a big purchase, 5 holy waters and 1 purple orb. Teleporting into this painting, we encounter a new enemy, Frosts. They are obviously weak to fire, so switching to Ifrit is rather good. Frosts are really tanky though, so even when using Ifrit, it can take a while. That's why we soften them up with a holy water first. With 1 holy water and some mostly charged Ifrit punches, they can be taken out rather quickly. We make sure to time the release of DT as the second punch hits so that we get a DT refill from killing the second Frost. This room has a bit of a puzzle in it, and by puzzle I mean it's a DMC puzzle, so you basically just hit shit with a sword. By using high time at the correct moment, we can actually hit the fireball as it spawns inside the dinosaur's mouth, instantly reflecting it and saving about 1 second per fireball. After cranking that soldier boy, we skip the platforming entirely with a well-placed double jump. Finally, we arrive at the last fight with Nello Angelo. It's time once and for all to have this epic battle. Oh, you just holy water him too, huh? In the process of taking this 3-part bath, it is revealed that Nello is actually Dante's brother Virgil, the big bad Mundus, actually brainwashing him and causing him to fight. So sad. Anyways, that nets us a B rank on this mission, and we head into mission 18. Now freshly equipped with a brand new weapon, Sparta, our father's sword, which absolutely blows cock and we are never going to use it again. It doesn't allow us to activate Devil Trigger, and while the sword itself does the same damage as Alistair in DT, we really want those extra abilities like Vortex for the added speed. Back underwater, we swim towards the last incisors of the game, doing another door entrance manipulation to make sure that we always can get this first one before she runs away. Parrying the scissors with 1 shot and then spamming away does the trick in killing these enemies quickly. Once dried up like a nun in the desert, we quickly climb to the top of this chamber. The intended strategy is to activate the dial, and then that spawns in water, which allows you to swim to the top and collect the Philosopher's Egg. It's actually 4 seconds faster to use air hike though, as the water takes quite a while to disappear. Jumping down towards the next door, we enter the second Nightmare boss fight chamber. And while the first fight was somewhat complicated, it's gonna get a lot more technical this time around. We vortex into the button to make sure that the fight starts in a solid state. For this fight, the top core is already broken to green, and we won't get the protection that the first fight gave us, meaning we have to do some new strategies. We can break the cores more than once now. We have to be very careful about not doing so because we want a green core on the top and a blue core on the back for the third fight. In order to do this and do it in one cycle, we quickly head towards the back of Nightmare to force a back attack. While this attack is happening, we start pre-charging our Ifrit punches. Ifrit punches are slightly more complicated than they may seem at a first glance, as is fucking basically everything in this game apparently. The charge animation for every part of the combo is the same length, 57 frames. The game runs at 60 FPS, so that's almost a whole second of charging per hit. One would think that the longer you charge your hit, the more damage it would do, and that's true to some extent. But it turns out that Ifrit actually does the max damage from charged hit at frame 50 of the animation, meaning that the 7 remaining frames are just for show. You can actually charge an attack for 50 frames and still get the same damage as charging for 57 frames. But you save over 1/10 of a second per hit doing this. This allows you to, over the course of 8 hits, save 1.2 seconds, which is enough time to get an additional hit in. By charging every attack for just long enough, you can actually do enough attacks to kill Nightmare 2 in only one cycle, and without breaking his back core from blue to green. On top of this, the third hit in the combo, the high kick, actually does more damage than fully charged if released at frame 49. So by timing this hit correctly, you can easily clear the damage threshold for a one-cycle kill. This is one of the newer strategies and is the most influential change in the past few years, mostly because this allows us to achieve an S rank on this mission, which was not previously possible, as we needed to use a Holy Water to achieve a one-cycle. This saved Holy Water and the additional orbs from the ranking bonus drastically changed the late game orb route. Into Mission 19, we jump through some portraits Super Mario style, making sure that while on our way, we destroy all of the furniture. If Jesus was a carpenter, then Dante was the demolition man. We quickly arrive at the one and only fight in the level with a new enemy, Nobodies. Nobodies have consistent health. I know, shocker, but what they lose in random health they make up for in being super fucking annoying. They love to jump around and dodge your attacks, taking every opportunity to laugh in your face. They take additional damage from the grenade launcher, and if their mask on their face breaks, they will become permanently smaller. We take them out while using only one Holy Water, after a few well-timed DT flash grenade gun shots. The Nobody death animation takes a random amount of time to play, so depending on our luck, we sometimes have to wait at the door for it to open. These two large orbs are a holdover from Mission 3. We managed to avoid the third one in Mission 16, so as soon as we spawn in here, we will grab it. No damage plus 33 orbs is enough to S rank despite the Holy Water usage. Mission 20, we finally make another purchase. It's been a while. If there was a merchant in this game, he would have been lonely. We buy one purple orb to refill our Devil Trigger and one Holy Water that we're going to use in the upcoming final fight with Nightmare. Diving into hell, we are finally tracking down Mundus, who up to this point has only come out to show us how much of a dick he is. Vortexing nearly instantly as we spawn, we stop ourselves from falling onto the ground, and we can fly all the way into the boss arena. We don't have an option to hit the dials before the fight this time, so we have to make do with a Vortex into the dial. While he is becoming harder, oh whoa, we take the opportunity to build our Devil Trigger while we head behind him. We want another forced back core fight, like in the second fight, but it's still blue from a previous encounter. Once it opens up, we can fire away and do the same combo loop we did for the top core in Mission 16. This breaks the core almost immediately, but it doesn't matter, because we just need to do enough damage to trigger the second phase. After that, it doesn't really matter what the core's health looks like. Once that is started, a cutscene plays where it turns out Trish betrays us. Big shocker there, and she helps Nightmare with this fight. This is perfect because we were just about to run out of time anyways, and we can Vortex to the dial once again to make Nightmare hard. Nightmare normally has a third phase, once his health bar reaches 0, where he freaks out and throws everything including the kitchen sink at us. But we can conveniently skip that by using a holy water that hits his hitbox right as it's about to show its core. This does so much damage that it skips the entire next phase immediately. Trish almost gets crushed by a boulder, but we save her anyway because Dante is such a nice guy.
Dante! Don't come any closer, you devil!
Yep, like I said, a nice guy, not a good guy. Mission 21 has no shopping, and we are almost done with the game. Killing Nightmare refuels our double trigger to full, and we use it for some faster movement. This room has a lock for a door in the previous room in it, and we can snipe it from across the map with the grenade gun. After 3 shots, it's open, and we can return to that room. Not so quickly though, because if we go through the door before the cutscene plays, then we'll have to come back in and reopen it. Arriving at the living cave, we have to avoid a waifu's worst nightmare: tentacles. These bad boys will suck you dry if you let them, so using Vortex to get past them is the best move. These next 3 nobody fights are the single hardest fights in the game and are a pure showcase of DT management skills. So I'll just let them speak for themselves. I take it back, there's one thing I'll point out. When I taunt the nobody and actually get DT back even though it's already dead, this is because I'm killing it with the stinger and then frame perfectly taunting right afterwards. We do collect some of their dead orbs though, because we want one last S rank for this mission. Before we can get that though, we have pretty much the only speedrun skip in the entire game. It's called Cosmo Climb. Vortex can send the player flying in pretty much any direction, but it only flies flat with the ground unless you're attacking an enemy. By flying underneath one of these plasmas and vortexing upwards into them, we can get a pitch that allows us to skip all of the platforming and leave the room right away. Once we get a good angle, we have to then manually override lock on to keep this angle. Otherwise, Dante will turn around and vortex back down towards the enemy. With mission 21 done and dusted, that just leaves missions 22 and 23. The first of which is literally just a boss fight with Mundus. We purchase our last purple orb, refilling our devil trigger, and buy 2 holy waters that we plan to use on mission 23. Trish betrays Mundus and becomes our mobbing sidekick just to instantly die. Mundus is pissed, so pissed in fact that he's going to pull us into space and literally change the genre of the entire game. From hack and slash to shoot 'em up. Dante then Mighty Morphin Power Rangers into an airplane and fights the boss in space. This section is pretty bad, but just like the rest of the game, it's got a surprising amount of depth to it. Again, like the water section, the analog stick has Y inverted axis, but the D-pad does not. Both the square and the circle button are shoot buttons, and X makes you fly faster. Triangle allows you to vortex through attacks, and pressing the devil trigger button spawns a giant dragon that does massive damage. The dragon does more damage depending on the amount of devil trigger runes that are used in the attack. Now that we have so many, this does almost half of the boss's health. Once our dragon is gone, we're on our own, forced to shoot at Mundus with all we've got. The shooting in this section has no upper limit. You can literally shoot as fast as the game can register inputs, so good luck with your hands. In order to take advantage of this, I play with my left hand holding the controller for movement and my right hand on the keyboard, as I find it much easier to mash 2 keyboard keys than 2 controller buttons. This doesn't help much for the first few seconds though, as Mundus has a shield that must be broken before you can hurt him. We break these 4 runes to break his shield and then expose his weak point on his chest. Doing so also builds Devil Trigger. The goal is to do enough damage so that we could do another dragon and finish this first phase. It might seem like I'm shooting fast, but in comparison to what is possible, it's actually not so fast. Now into the second phase, we have a full refill of our Devil Trigger. Mundus is waist deep in some lava, but that doesn't bother Dante none. He just jumps in and starts wailing away at him. Doing 2 slashes and then high time on repeat is high enough DPS to actually kill Mundus before we run out of Devil Trigger. But this is only the case assuming we don't die, and if you haven't noticed, lava does damage over time. Fortunately for us, it can't actually kill Dante. It'll bring him down to 0 HP, but it'll never do the final blow, so we can stand in it all day and never die. This would be perfect if it wasn't for Mundus actually fighting back, how dare he. The strategy at the highest level is to just pray that you don't get hit and die when you wail on him. It's fairly likely that you won't. I would say it's about 8 out of 10 times that you survive, but I would be lying if I said world records haven't died to it before. With Mundus 2 out of the way, mission 22 is complete, but not without a little melodrama first.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light.
Man, that lip quiver gets me every time. In classic Capcom fashion, the villain has set the island to explode on a timer and we must escape. About 15 minutes before the island would normally explode because they give us an oddly generous amount of time to run away. The 2 holy waters we grabbed on mission 22 come in handy here to clear out the final rooms as we make our great escape. I'm not sure where Dante thinks he's going though, because at this point there isn't even an established way we got to the island, let alone a way for us to get off of it. Fortunately, we stumble back into this room where the totally innocuous airplane was. Before we could use it to fly away though, Mundus is here for one last fight. Taunting to build Devil Trigger, we then use Vortex and spam the attack button so it does slightly more damage than just holding the button. This quickly evaporates Mundus, and Trish gives us one more opportunity to say a quippy one-liner. Finally, in the airplane, our favorite part of the game, we're flying to the end and it's essentially an auto-scroller. Nothing you could do could save time in this section. Well, except for holding down on the right analog stick, which for some reason saves about 10 seconds in this section as it makes the plane fly faster. Guess who didn't figure that out until they had world record? And that was Devil May Cry Any Percent Normal, completed in 34:42 in-game time. This was again a segmented run that I made mostly for this video to show off the speedrun route and strategies used in my 33:51 load remover time world record achieved on September 10th of 2024. When I started editing this video, that was the world record, and the route was pretty set in stone. Of course, because this is speedrunning and things change right when you don't want them to, as of 2 days ago, Moody has improved the world record by about 3 seconds and used a completely different route. I'm super excited to see where this new route goes, and if you want to see me explore it, make sure to go check out my live streams over on Twitch and on my archive YouTube channel. You can also find the segmented run and previous world records over there uncut. Thank you so much for watching and stay stylish.